to throw some stats at you, and it's about the importance of having a clean home, because science will demonstrate the logic behind keeping your home clean and organized. Are you ready to be amazed? Hell yeah. So a survey conducted by the National Sleep Foundation found that people who make their beds every morning are 19% more likely to report regular sleeping patterns. So if you want a good night's sleep, make your bed. In 2011, researchers at Princeton University found that clutter can actually make it more difficult to focus on a particular task. Specifically, they found that the visual cortex can be overwhelmed by task-irrelevant objects, making it harder to allocate attention and complete tasks efficiently. A study led by Associate Professor Nicola Keith, she's a researcher, scientist, and professor at Indiana University, found that people with clean houses, or clean homes, are healthier than those with messy houses. Research in 2009 found that levels of stress hormone cortisol were higher in home environments that were cluttered. Elevated cortisol levels sustained over a period of time can lead to anxiety, and it can lead to depression. And finally, in one study, participants with messy desks were perceived to be less conscientious, more neurotic, and less agreeable. Are you one of those? Such perceptions of an employee are likely to have a negative influence to the way that others interact with them, and may also have a negative consequence on their career progression. But the big question today is this: what makes staying organized so difficult? If staying organized is so good for you, why doesn't everyone do it? Luckily, we have Poppy Duffree with us. Poppy is the owner of Organised Interiors, a bespoke home organising service. Having lived in London for 7 years, working in the corporate world, and as a business manager for an owner-led SME, Poppy moved to Bristol to launch her own business, Organised Interiors. Combining her skills of organisation, coaching, and service improvement with a genuine passion for helping others transform their space, she became a professional organizer. Having seen time and time again that organising is truly the foundation for success, she helps her clients become organised with systems that work for them as individuals, ensuring their spaces are functional and beautifully organised. Poppy finds her work incredibly rewarding, and her clients' testimonials highlight just how life-changing this process can be. Poppy, welcome to Success Talks. How are you doing today?
Good, thank you. Yeah, it's been a good morning so far. Had my tea, had a meeting, speaking to you. So yeah, it's going well, thank you. How's yours?
My day is great. I didn't have tea. I'm breaking my coffee habits. I'm refusing to have it. I don't believe that it's good for our energy levels throughout the day. So I've swapped it for water and lemon. So
very impressive.
Looking after my body and mind.
Best thing to do.
So in your article, first of all, thank you for submitting the article. We really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
You express the importance of a clean home. And we've also seen that in the studies that I've just gone through. Yet many people do not start in the first place. Why is this?
It's a really good question. And I think, like you say, it's really hard for people to become organised if it's not natural. For some people, it's really natural. People like to be organised. It's a bit more inherent in the way that they think. And for some people, it just doesn't come naturally, or they've never been taught. Often we've not been taught how to be organised. And actually, you have parents that say to their children, go and tidy your room and the child doesn't want to do it or whatever, but actually, has that parent ever actually taught them how to stay organized or taught them how to tidy their room? It often starts at a really young age with these like subtle things that people are asked to do and actually never really have explained to them. There's kind of this assumption that we all know how to be organized, and actually that's really not the case at all.
Oh my God. I thought the same thing myself. My mum used to punish me for not cleaning up. She would say, you have to do the kitchen or you have to do the living room. She used to leave us a little note. And I would clean it to the standard that I knew because I didn't know what the standards were. I didn't actually really know how to use the chemicals or the polish properly. I seen my mum do some of the things, but I wasn't really paying attention. So that makes sense. So people are just not being taught how to. And I suppose that impacts generations after generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's an assumption that it's one of those things that we just know how to do. It's a bit like sometimes people assume that everyone knows how to manage their money, or these things that are actually really key foundation skills in life, but yet aren't really taught in school or in other areas of our life, maybe not by parents. And it's nobody's fault. It's just that it's one of those things that often isn't talked about and taught, and therefore it's really easy to find ourselves in our adult lives not really knowing how to organize ourselves for success, organize our space around us, organize, especially now we've got so much going on in our digital world that we're constantly having thrown at us, how to organize our inboxes. And it kind of trickles into all these different areas and means that things can become overwhelming quite quickly because we've never really taken the time to learn how to do it ourselves, and most importantly, learn what works for us. Because while some principles will be appropriate and applicable for everybody, we have to work to find out what works for us as individuals, our lifestyle, our routines. And that's another thing that people maybe don't think about as much.
I suppose there's also another angle, is that we just tolerate certain things. So whilst we don't know, we tolerate the mess that we live in. But if you apply it to driving, for example, we just didn't know how to drive, but we made sure that we went out of our way to book driving lessons. Yeah, so we put ourselves in that environment so that we can learn and grow. So why do we tolerate living in chaos? Do you understand why people accept this behavior as a good thing?
I think it's that often people don't notice. I think people are becoming more aware of it because it's become quite on trend to be organized. So regardless of any like mental health benefits or benefits to do with productivity, it's become on trend in kind of a different way, almost in terms of like interiors and how we organize our spaces. And I think the fact that it's been kind of thrust into our daily lives in magazines via Netflix series like the Home Edit, a Marie Kondo series, I think that means that people are starting to kind of look at those things and then look at the space around them and start to realize that maybe they don't necessarily want a show home finish, but that actually maybe they're at the other end of the scale and they are living in clutter. And it's actually really overwhelming to be in that position when your home is messy and disorganized and cluttered and you can't find things. And what tends to happen is that then you become behind on paperwork because you pop something down and you've not, and then you have reminders, or it could just be a whole host of things that generally your life tends to feel like it's in a bit of disarray and a bit disjointed and you're not on top of things.
What would be interesting to know is that from your own experience, when did you have that shift from disorganized, whatever scale that was, to being so organized?
I think I've always been quite organised when it comes to work, and quite a lot of my role in the corporate world was service improvement and doing reviews of projects or complaints, looking at how we could improve the service. So I've always been really interested in taking something that's broken or semi-broken and finding an efficiency and improving a process that means that something is better. When it comes to my personal life, I wouldn't say I was disorganized, but I definitely wasn't as aware of organisation as I am today. And the thing that really was kind of a catalyst for that was I decided to quit my job and go travelling. And I really wanted to do it wholeheartedly, and as a result I wanted to get rid of all of my stuff in the UK so that it was as hard to come back as it was to start a life somewhere else. I wanted to feel like super free. So I basically sold and donated the vast majority of everything I owned, which by then had become quite a lot for a 26-year-old. I just had got into this habit of consumerism. I wasn't particularly happy with it, like my life, and so I found myself shopping a lot more and buying a lot more things. And when I freed myself of all of those possessions, bar a couple of suitcases that were staying, with family, as in just to pop into storage, and my backpack that I was going to travel with, it was the single most freeing experience I had ever had, really unexpectedly, but I just felt so much physically and mentally lighter. And for me, that was the start of a real kind of process about connecting possessions with our mental health, why we behave in certain ways, why we purchase certain things, the implication that then has, and how it can become a really detrimental cycle of buying more, living with more things around us in a chaotic way, and how that has more of a negative impact on our mental health, versus when we start to free ourselves of these things and organize the possessions that we do have around us, the quite literally life-changing process that happens along that journey. So that was how I kind of started and really got into that process and way of thinking.
That is such a powerful message, and a message that people, from my experience, they don't hear or welcome into their life until they're in their 40s, 50s, or onwards. And you recognized it in your 20s, which I think is quite a big challenge because of consumerism, especially with the rise of social media. You have to have the latest thing. This is the new trend. I've got to be this person. And so we just keep buying all this stuff, and actually it doesn't fuel our soul. In actual fact, it can weigh us down and keep us, like you said, stuck in a location. You really wanted to be free, so you can just move around. That's very powerful, and well done for figuring that out sooner.
Well, thanks. I think I'm quite lucky because it happened quite organically for me. It was secondary. It wasn't with the aim of of not having as much, or there was kind of a reason that was different, which kind of led to that process happening. But I'm very grateful because it genuinely was the start of a larger transformation, and that's what I love about my job, and being able to work with clients and just take them on this journey. And at the end, their home looks and feels, more importantly, feels like a place that they never imagined their home could feel like in a couple of days. And that doesn't mean show homey. It doesn't mean we've got rid of 90% of their belongings. It's just really focusing on what that individual needs in their home and putting the right organisational systems in place to support their routines rather than detract from them.
Do they go back to old habits?
I've yet to have a client come back to me because they were unable to sustain the systems that we put in place or to do the same area. I think often a lot of my clients need an initial help to get to the stage of organisation. And on the whole, I tend to work with my clients where they really want to become more organised and use their space efficiently and effectively, rather than just this kind of aspirational final look. Then I work really closely with them. And so it's as much about teaching and working with them and imparting knowledge throughout the session as it is about physically moving things. And for me, that's really important. I want to empower the people that I'm working with so that they can maintain it. I know it's going to work for them because we've talked about how they use their space and their routines and their priorities in life. And so I've yet to have somebody come back and struggle. Sometimes people will call me up to tackle another space because they would like help getting the space into the right place and the right systems, because that can be quite challenging. So in itself, having that kind of assistance, and I think helping them feel like that has the confidence that they've got it right and now they just need to maintain it, is really key. And that for me is a big probably one of the most important things that I do is empowering people to do it themselves. I don't want to be called up to redo a space, and I see that as a failure rather than a good thing, because I want to be able to empower people to do it themselves and maintain it going forward.
Yeah, again, you just blow my mind. You're so powerful. You've not just identified, okay, yes, it's the cleaning of the space and organizing the space, and the benefits that come with that alone. you've identified that if there's no real change in the person's behavior, then they will go back to old habits. And so you're helping them to go on that journey with you, and you're asking the right questions to understand, well, how do you move around your space? What's important for your lifestyle? And you've adapted and shown them a path to achieve it and sustain it. So it's a long-term success, not just short-term, tidy my home and disappear.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really important to me. I mean, some clients do, you know, are relatively organized, and they just want to go a step further, and they want me to come in with beautiful products and kind of put that cherry on the cake, which is fun in a completely different way. But for clients that are looking for a lifestyle change, and their goals are not necessarily just the aesthetics of their space, there's other things that they want to address, then yeah, absolutely, that process that we go through is really important to understand them as an individual.
Is there a better time to do it? Like, I don't know, spring clean? Is there something, because I don't understand where that comes from. Is there some sort of logic that in springtime it's the best time to clean? I don't know. My question, yeah, going back to the question, it's when is the important time to, or the most impactful time to clean your space?
I would say it's probably different for everyone. That probably sounds like a cop-out, but I think it's again thinking about what works for you. So for example, if you have children and they are maybe of school age and they're going back to school in September, you might want to use the summer holidays as a period of time to, or the last few weeks of the summer holidays, to get everything set up ready for the new routines that are coming in, because you want to start something afresh. I think having some form of motivation is really important. So it might be that it's a new year. For some people, they just do have this surge of motivation at the beginning of January and they want to get everything in order. I think it's more about when it's right for the individual, when they feel ready and open to make that change is the most important thing, rather than it being seasonal. I do find, actually, really interestingly, when it's sunny, so when we have like a really intense, like hot sunny period, especially after a few weeks of doom and gloom, or when we come into summer, I get far more inquiries, which I always find really fascinating. And I think it's because the sunshine comes out, people feel happier, it's like hope, a new start, it kind of signifies all these things, and people feel a bit more able and ready to have a new start and get everything sorted, and they want their life to be kind of happy and sunshine and yellow. And yeah, I find that really interesting, how there seems to be this kind of direct correlation between this like increase in like flurry of new inquiries around when it's not been particularly nice weather, and then we have nice weather for a period of time. So I find that quite interesting.
Yeah, so summer's the time. Yeah, no, that is. What about, so lockdown was different. All of a sudden we had time, and I had seen loads of posts on social media about organizing the home, and you know, keeping on top of things, finishing off the garden, those things. Have you seen any differences since lockdown, or has it been quite the opposite of organized?
I think there's a difference because people are valuing their home environment a lot more, because people were all of a sudden confronted with it because they legally weren't allowed to leave their homes. And so I think that led to a lot of people reassessing their space. I think a lot of people organised it themselves. They went through the process themselves, you know, probably used books and various other resources to kind of go through that process. I think for some people it's been particularly overwhelming because they're not in a place where they're able to make that start on their own, and they weren't in a position to be able to have an organizer or somebody else in to help them. So since lockdown's lifted, I think it's been, I don't think I've seen a big difference. There's definitely a group of people who wanted support over that period and had to wait until restrictions were lifted and they were able to have someone in their home to start that process. But I think it made them even more kind of keen to get started and will value their new kind of fresh space more, because all of a sudden they've got some headspace back and they had to live in a state that they maybe weren't so happy with for a longer period of time than they'd hoped. And so again, I think it's finding that motivation for whoever that individual is and what it is that's stressing them out, and always keeping that in mind when they're maintaining systems, that if I don't do this, I'm just going to go straight back to where I was, at the first point of this process. And actually that's not a place where I particularly want to be, and it wasn't supporting me or making me happy. And so yeah, keeping in mind throughout the whole journey, and when you get to the end and sustaining it and beyond, remembering what that was like is actually a really important thing. Not to put yourself through it emotionally every day, but just to keep it in mind that actually there is a difference to an organised home. And as a person who, and for me, it felt like this, and I don't want to be back there. So I'm going to do this moving forward to keep things organised.
So it's almost like visualization, but the reverse. So you visualize your future, you believe it to be true, and you connect with it, and it motivates you forward. But equally looking into the past and saying, oh, I remember when I was like X, Y, and Z. And actually, I don't want that anymore. I want a better path for my life.
Yeah, and I always ask clients if they want me to take before and after pictures, and of course I always ask if they're happy for them to be shared or not. But at the end of working with a client, I will send them their before and after pictures, because actually some of them have already forgotten what the before looked like, because everything is so different. And then they see the before and they just can't believe that they were living in that space in that way, because the difference is so huge and they already feel so different. And so it's quite useful having that visual reminder of how things were and how they could be if they weren't to maintain their space. Absolutely.
Oh, good. So based on what we've shared today, what one key advice would you give to the listeners?
I think the key advice would be to think about your individual goal. Like, why is it that if you're in a state where you look around your environment and it doesn't particularly make you happy, it's not supporting you, it's a bit cluttered, it's a bit unorganized, what is your goal? Is it to be organized and have more time? Is it to have more mental clarity? Think about what the direct benefits are going to be for you, because that will really help with motivation, and that's always the starting point. So yeah, that I'm going to give more than one point. That's the main point. But I suppose off the back of that, then the right system is to then think about decluttering and then organising into a place that ensures it's easy to maintain. That's kind of the process. But that motivation at the beginning is where it all starts, and it has to come from each person, and understanding why you as an individual want to make that change is the most important and powerful thing throughout the whole process.
Yeah, all life changes start with why.
Yeah,
Why you do it in the first place. If you want sustainable results, then start with why. For sure. So do you have any services or even products available to help our listeners to go to yellow?
Yeah, absolutely. I do a lot of in-home sessions, but I also do virtual sessions. So whether that is an hour session, if people just want a bit of like initial assistance and they just want some ideas so that they can springboard off that, and those ideas to be personal and work for their space. I do like hour sessions that are virtual organisation, or we can do a sustained session. We can do a longer session where I'll look at the space, they can send me measurements, and I can look at products that might be useful for them if they maybe need some storage systems to help them get things organised, and we can do a much more in-depth process. So yeah, virtual sessions are something that can absolutely help with, and it's a great place to start, especially when you're consumed by your space. It's really hard to see what a fresh pair of eyes sees. So having that kind of support at the beginning can be the thing that helps you go all the way through the process without feeling kind of becoming unmotivated.
Perfect. So how can the listeners get in touch with you?
So they can have a look at my website if they'd like to find out more information, which is organised-interiors.co.uk. They can drop me an email, which is hello@organised-interiors.co.uk. Or if they would like to contact me via Instagram, I'm at Organised Interiors, all one word.
Oh, brilliant. Poppy is available to support you, guide you, and inspire you on a journey to yellow. Reach out to her today. Help is here, and it is always here, but you must take the first step. Always. Details can be found in the description. Poppy, thank you for your words of wisdom today and in the Yellow magazine. May your life be yellow.
Thanks, Tammy.